Hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining me back on my channel, Hierarchy of Reads. My name is Tiffany, and today I am here to do a book tag called the Final Exam Book Tag. This tag was created by Courtney, and I'll go ahead and link her channel in the description box below. Now, Courtney is newer to BookTube, and so far I've watched a couple of her videos, and I really enjoy her content. She reads a lot of books that I have never read or not heard of, so that's always kind of fun to be exposed to new things. And also she teaches, I think it was English, she said, at a college level, and so that's kind of fun too because you get to see her perspective on things. So again, yeah, I'll link her channel in the description box below, and I hope that you go check out her channel. I was tagged to do this by Brian over at the channel Bookish, and I will also leave his channel in the description box below. I really love Brian's channel. I love the things he has to say. I love his stories that he kind of interjects into his different BookTube tags and reviews, and I also just love his kind of general mannerisms and the way that he conveys information, so he's another great channel to check out as well. This tag consists of 7 questions, and the very first one is the one that I don't have an answer to, so I'm going to kind of twist the question a little bit to fit what I want it to ask. So the first question is, name a book at the end or toward the end of a series that you felt finished the series on a strong note. Now, one thing that becomes increasingly clear to me over time is that I do not tend to read series for whatever reason, or if I do read them, I do not continue on with them. I'm not sure why I don't. It's not something that I consciously choose to do. I just don't kind of gravitate towards a lot of series, and again, when I do, for some reason, you know, I'll read the first couple books, and even when I enjoy them, I just never go out of my way to pick up the continuing books in the series. So instead, what I'm going to do is twist this question into naming a book that I think will end well, or, you know, go on well towards the end of the series. And for that, I'm gonna say the Assassin's Apprentice series by Robin Hobb. I've really been trying to get into fantasy lately, but whenever I do, which admittedly is not very often, I don't really like a lot of it. I find a lot of it to be kind of silly or cringy or just forced. And so I've asked people what is a good fantasy series, and every single time I ask that question, something by Robin Hobb gets brought up. And so I really want to check out her books, and I'm hoping that my prediction for that will come true. The second question is, name a book that was instrumental to your understanding of a complex issue. And for this one, I have to pick a textbook, but it's one of my favorite textbooks that I've read, and that was Brain and Behavior, An Introduction to Biological Psychology by Bob Garrett. And this one is the 4th edition. I don't know if they've since released another edition, but I loved this book, which I said that very dramatically, but it's true. I still have the tabs in it. I still go back and read it and reference it from time to time. But basically, anybody who knows me really well knows that I have a very weird obsession with the brain. I just think it's so fascinating that a hunk of electrified meat is responsible for everything in the human world. Every thought, every feeling, every emotion, every action, every work of art, every discovery, every invention. I don't know how people can't find that exciting and exhilarating, and I think it's one of the very few territories that's still primarily not unexplored but undiscovered. You know, we do know a lot about the brain, but there's so much more that we don't know or that we don't understand completely. And so it's also just kind of this fun, seemingly uncharted territory for me. And this book in particular was really fun because it was when I really started to understand the basic components of how neurology and brain function works. I just found it amazing and so much fun to read. Challenging, yes, but to me that made it more fun, and it was instrumental in me understanding how the brain works with human cognitions, human emotions, human bodily functioning, and it really kind of opened my eyes to just how holistic the human body is, and I absolutely loved it. So, like, if you're ever kind of bored and you want to learn something new and you find this for cheap on thrift books or something, I recommend this textbook actually. Question number 3 was to share a book that does a particularly good job of examining the natural world. And admittedly, I don't read a lot of books that do a lot of examining of the natural world. I'm not very fond of, lengthy descriptions of nature, which is odd because I love nature and I love being out in it and seeing it and interacting with it. But in books, I don't tend to like a lot of heavy descriptions. But the book that came to mind was Kusumakura by Natsume Soseki. I'm trying to make sure that it gets into the camera without the light glaring off of it. But I really thought that this book was beautifully written, and I loved the way that every description just seemed to roll off the tongue so smoothly. And what I do remember about this book was that it really addressed a lot of the way that Japan's culture and civilization was changing at the time that this was written, and kind of coming to terms with that and thinking about what that meant and what the implications were. And so I remember too that a lot of the kind of natural world descriptions had a lot to do, again, with kind of the underlying context. There were a lot of words, like the words that the author would use to describe certain things in the natural world, you could tell were also correlated to the changes that were being made in kind of the more human world. Of course, the human is natural, but you understand what I mean, I hope. And so yeah, this is the book that came to mind, and I'll probably have to reread this soon because I no longer remember much about it, just that I really did enjoy it. Oh, and because also I've been called out for not saying the translators, which it's important that we acknowledge them. This was translated by Meredith McKinney. Question number 4 is particularly fun. It has 3 components because the question is rhetorical appeals. Share 3 books, fiction or nonfiction, one that made persuasive use of logic, one that was highly credible, and one that made good use of emotion. And so for logic, I have a book that I actually never finished, but I really loved what I did read of it. And that is The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business, written by Charles Duhigg. And this is truly all about how we think things through, why we perceive things the way we perceive things, how we can change that to benefit us in our future goals. And it has a lot of logic built into kind of the underlying philosophies and ideas. And I need to get back into reading this one too. I posted a picture, if anybody follows my Instagram page, where I went through my bookshelves and I collected all of the books that I have started at one point or another and never finished. And there's a lot. There's, I think, like 32 books on my bookshelf that I have half read. And every time I have a tag like this and I pull one of them out, I always think to myself, I don't know why I haven't finished this. So yes, one day I will be a better reader. But yeah, this book has a lot of logic and I really enjoyed it, and I really recommend it from what I did read and based on other people's reviews of the book. The second component of that question was the book that was highly credible. And for this one, I chose this beast. It is The Theory and Practice of Group Psychotherapy by Irvin D. Yalom and with Mullen. I don't know how to pronounce that name, I'm so sorry. But yes, this person. And I don't know if you can tell from here, but this is a massive brick of a book. And it was required reading for one of my classes in last semester. But this book was so important in understanding how to establish and maintain a successful psychotherapy group. And it is extremely credible. Irvin Yalom, he has so much experience with doing group psychotherapy, and so many of his practices are research-based, and a lot of the research is talked about in this book because, again, in my field of clinical psychology, we understand therapy as an art and a science. And so, of course, the science alone is not enough, right? If you can have knowledge of the best techniques in the world, but if you're not a skillful clinician and you can't relate to humans and you can't genuinely care and open up to them, then all of those research strategies aren't going to be effective. It truly is the mix of the two. But also, I love the focus on research-based treatments because there are so many people who have so many ideas of what might help and what might not, and there are so many factors about what helps certain people and why, that guessing is not good enough, especially if people are trusting us and coming to us to help them. we need to do our jobs well and make sure that we're giving them the best that we possibly can. And to me, this book was very much about this. And it was very, very credible and just so important. But yes, this is extremely credible, extremely important, I think, in my training, and I loved it. And finally, the third part of the question was to name a book that made good use of emotion. And I don't actually have this book because I listened to it on audiobook, but I will insert a picture. But that is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. I talked about this in one of my recent monthly wrap-ups, but that book hit me so hard. Like, I still think about it to this day, and even when I talk about it, I feel that feeling come up from the pit of my stomach. I think the main story was so impactful, so emotionally impactful, but I also think the way that it dealt with a number of other kind of thoughts and emotions that the characters went through in a very nuanced and subtle way is what made that emotion so impactful. So there's a big twist at the end of the story, and you learn about, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without giving it away. You learn about something that one of the character must feel guilt over. And I just thought about that kind of guilt and regret and sadness that character must have felt, and it blew me away. Like, I said it in my wrap-up video that I was driving in my car and I was listening to the audiobook, and it just hit me like abruptly, so emotionally. And it's very rare that a book can do that to me that strongly. So I think that was a brilliant use of emotion by Colson Whitehead, and it's why I'm actually getting ready to do a buddy read with one of my friends and read the book The Underground Railroad by him, and I'm hoping that book is just as good. Question number 5 is to tell us about a book that sparked an intense conversation or discussion between you and someone else. And the most recent example of that would probably be Jim Jones and the People's Temple by Jeff Gwynne. Once I finished reading that, I had to go and tell my cohort members, because we're all psychology students and we kind of love to analyze and break down and understand human behavior and motivations. And so I remember that we have like back when we were able to meet together, we had an hour in between classes. And during lunch, I was like, hey guys, I just read this, and I couldn't help but kind of vomit all of the information that I had read. And a couple of the people were very, very interested in the topic, and they also had read a little bit. So we were really having a really great and engaged discussion about that book and about kind of the psychology behind it. And it was really, really fun. I just have to say randomly here that one of the best things about being in a graduate program is it's like your whole life you've been obsessed with this topic that nobody else cares about, right? It's something that you always find yourself thinking about and immersed in, and you just get accustomed to either not talking about it because people don't care, or talking about it and waiting for their eyes to gloss over in boredom so you know, oh hey, I better shut up. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in this group of people who are just as passionate about it as you, and now all of a sudden you can have these conversations till you're worn out, till you're passed out falling asleep because you've been thinking so hard or exploring a topic for so long, and because they are so passionate as well, and because they also have spent their whole lifetime thinking about the topic, they come to you sometimes with completely different perspectives and ideas that you've never heard of. And so it really challenges you in this just uniquely fun way. And also, I'm very, very lucky that my cohort is very close. They have become some of my dearest friends, and I value them and respect them so much. And so I love the ways that they've challenged me. And so that was true in this situation too. I don't really remember the exact way that they challenged me, but I remember when we were having this discussion, they said a couple things and I was like, I don't think that's true, but then I kept thinking about what they were saying and wondered if perhaps it was. So yeah, that would be my answer for number 5. Number 6 is to tell us about a book that left you thinking long after you had finished it. And for this, I have to choose Boethius, The Consolation of Philosophy. I've referenced this book in so many videos, and I reference it all the time in person, but that's because this gem is something that, it's just one of those books that came to me at the exactly right time in my life. And I always refer back to the principal philosophy in this whole book, which is basically letting the knowledge that you have accumulated and the philosophy that you have accepted be the guiding light in your life, even when it seems that all is lost. And not taking the misfortune in life personally and not letting it get you down. You know, it's inevitable, right? Life comes with fortune and misfortune, and if we accept the fortune as rightfully ours, then we must also accept the misfortune as rightfully ours. And instead of you know, kind of staying so focused on why did this happen to me, to just accept it and to use the tools, the intellectual tools, philosophical tools, and otherwise that we've developed over time to help us get through and move on and adapt. And so, yeah, I think about this book all the time. So, yeah, I think that this would be my answer for that book. And finally, question number 7 is to tag others to take this final exam with me. And so at the time of filming, I haven't decided who I will be tagging, but I will be sure to link everybody in the description box below. And if I follow you on any social media, I will also try to tag you on that social media site. But other than that, if I haven't tagged you personally and you're watching this and you want to do it, consider yourself tagged. So yes, thank you so much for joining me today in my final exam. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video, but until then, please be well.